Have you ever wondered what it means to face your shadow self? Have you ever asked what shadow work is? Find out right after this. Welcome to the Peep Podcast. I'm your host, Nicolle Maroc, and on this episode, I'm excited to introduce you to Elizabeth Powell. But first, just a quick reminder that if you're interested in financially supporting the podcast, I've added a PayPal donation button to the website at peeppodcast.com. That's P-E-E-P podcast.com. My platform fees are up for renewal in the next few weeks, and any amount you contribute will go directly to helping me continue to publish the show on all the popular podcasting apps. Also, if you're in the Triangle area of North Carolina, you're invited to my book signing at Heyday Brewing in Raleigh on Tuesday, November 1st, 2022, from 6 to 9 p.m. I'll have Please Don't Call Me Psychic, Stories from My Paranormal Life, The Tritium Hypothesis, and its sequel, my newest book, The Dark Season, for sale. I'll do a short reading from The Dark Season and toast its release. Even if you don't want to buy a book, just come out to a great little brewery and have fun on a Tuesday night. In case you can't make it, my books are available on Amazon, and I'll put a link to The Dark Season in the show notes. Okay, now that the announcements are out of the way, let's get to the fun part. Elizabeth Powell is a Reiki Master, yoga and fitness instructor, and spiritual coach based in Hickory, North Carolina. She has a passion and a unique approach to helping people heal their bodies, minds, and souls. And I'll let her explain. Let's dive in with Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk about your work with, shadow work, crystals, Reiki, anything else you want to talk about. But first, I'm going to ask you what I ask everybody else.
Okay.
What got you interested? Like, what sparked your interest in doing energy work?
For me to do energy work, I've always been really intuitive, even as a child, and I really never understood some of the things that I would see or hear, or sometimes really just feel a lot of different things, especially within dreams, things like that. And it took me a long time to even understand what I did and an outlet for it and how I could help other people with it. And so I became a yoga instructor first, and I was going through, like, people would be in a pose and I would do hands-on adjustments to help them become better aligned and not hurt themselves. And as I would touch people, like, I would start to get information, through my hands. Like, especially if I touched a place of inflammation or pain on somebody, like, I would immediately feel if that was an emotional pain or if it's a physical pain, or if it's something about their mental state. So it kind of, I'd always done it, but it kind of came to a head whenever I started doing that kind of thing. And then I actually had saw a documentary on Netflix about energy work, and they had included Reiki. And I was like, that's really cool. I would like to experience that for myself. And I did my first Reiki healing, and it was very profound and a big emotional release, a big spiritual awakening even after that. And I really didn't think I would be good at it until somebody did some convincing that I would be. And so I did it. And ever since then, I've just, it's been a real blessing. So it's like I found an outlet for my purpose and what I've always been able to do.
That's awesome. So when you say you get information, do you get it intuitively or clairvoyantly? Like, do you see, some people see like video play out videos, not the
Right.
right word, but like play out like a film or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, how do you get your information?
It really depends on whatever space I'm in that day. I mean, we all go in and out of our intuition. We're human, you know. If it's really big, like if somebody's really dealing with something, and again, this kind of plays into the shadow, because people don't realize just how much their mentality, the things that they believe and how they think, and their emotions, how it really plays into their physical body and their energetics around their body. So yeah, if it's something very big and maybe somebody's like lashing out at somebody, or I hear an argument, that usually I will see like the spiritual manifestations of something that somebody's dealing with. And that, I guess, is a definition of some clairvoyancy. But usually, most of the time, it is intuitively. So it may come to me like a feeling, like I'll start to feel very, very sad if somebody's dealing with grief, or joy. It could be good things too, you know. So yeah, it's kind of both for me.
Yeah, that's that's cool. I can relate to that. Most of my stuff comes through feelings because I'm an empath, but every once in a while I'll get it some other way and I'm like, "Oh, that was neat."
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Okay, so let's get into shadow work. I am coming from a place of not knowing much about it at all because I was just never really exposed to it. And you were one of the first people I ever heard talk about it. And I was like, we were in a different, I'll just say, we were training with
Mhm.
together for Reiki. And so I had enough questions going on in my head through, advanced Reiki and masterclass that I was just like, I'll ask her about that later. So this is the opportunity now.
Yeah.
So can you kind of explain what the shadow self is and tell me if I'm using the wrong phrasing?
No, that's correct. The shadow self represents the embodiment of everything, whether it's, your emotions, how you believe things about yourself. It's really everything that you reject about yourself. It's that darkness within you that everybody has. And so shadow work is about looking at the shadow and not necessarily bringing it into light, although it could be a good thing to bring it to light, but just becoming aware of it and understanding it so that way you become a whole and complete person. Or I like to call it remembering that you're a whole and complete person, because you always are. It's just we forget.
Yeah. So, for example, there's kind of a saying that what you see in others that you don't like in others is a reflection of what you don't like about yourself. Is it that kind of thing?
Absolutely. It absolutely can be.
Okay. So, how do you work with people on that?
So for me, I use Reiki. I'm also a spiritual coach, and I also, which is something that I've always been able to do, and part of my heritage is shamanism,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the ability to actually journey either for yourself or for other people into the spirit. So I kind of, when somebody makes an appointment with me, I kind of, sit and kind of tune into their energy. And also I'll ask them questions beforehand. So like what they're looking for, and if they're really wanting to do work, if they really have some emotional disturbances, or high anxieties, or they're dealing with trauma, then usually I know that some shadow work will help that person. So the first thing that I do, how I do it is, I actually will send Reiki through the body and probably do Reiki for a little bit, because I want that person to be relaxed. That helps somebody really connect to themselves. So it's whenever they're relaxed. And Reiki is just a really beautiful energy to help them to do that. And since Reiki is using the hands, I will intuitively go to those places where I feel led to put the Reiki energy. But also what I'm doing is, for me, I use angelic guides because of my Christian background. and Native American guides too. But I ask them, and I'll ask their guides, like, show me or lead me to where something energetically is either stuck or the energy's not flowing right, or what, and tell me what it is that's there. So that's some of the intuitive work that I'll do with it. So whenever I place my hands on somebody, or even if I've been kind of hovering over their subtle bodies away from their body, it may be like, oh, here's a memory of some trauma, that sits here, and they have issues with their third eye or chakra. Or especially my hands, if I feel my hands tingling around a person, then I know that their emotional body is just really out of whack. And usually they'll tell me like, yeah, I have really bad anxiety, and, or I'll have panic attacks, things like that. So I kind of start from there, and I'll kind of listen or hear whatever space I'm in that day. And if I need to journey into them to really get to the subconscious of where they are, then I will use that shamanism technique. It's also, apart from shamanism, it's called active imagination, which is something that Carl Jung, he was a psychologist. In 1913, he actually created or coined that terminology. That was a tactic that he used, was active imagination, or a meditation technique that allowed somebody to delve into their subconscious, to understand, sometimes even meet their shadow self. And that can be a really scary process.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So it's really good to do it with somebody, but anybody can do it on their own if they want to. And it doesn't have to necessarily be like that. They can do journal prompts, meditation, whatever. But I will kind of figure out which way I need to go with it. And along the way, I'll ask them like, hey, like, I'm feeling some anger coming up, it feels like something that happened to you around 6 years old, and they're like, oh, like my parents got divorced at that time. And, I felt like my father abandoned me during that time. So now I have issues with men, so it's like, okay, so this traumatic event, you suppressed some emotions and created a belief concept around that. And it plays into your relationships. So that's sort of some things that I will do, because there's different ways. There's always different ways to do it. So I will either, if I have to journey or use active imagination, I either will journey for that person if they really just cannot connect, because some people have issues with the third eye and the crown chakra that's blocked and they're unable to do that. Or I will help somebody else do it themselves and walk them through it and kind of help them come to that realization.
So once they have kind of acknowledged that part of themselves that they're struggling with, what would their next step be?
So the next steps would be to, for lack of a better phrase, work with your demons. People get really afraid that, I have a lot of people who come, especially if they've seen entities in their dreams, and they're like, it's repeated, and they're like, I have a demon with me. I have a demon with me. And I'm like, well, let's work with your demon. And they're like, no, let's not work with our demon. Let's just get rid of it, but so acknowledging that it's there for a reason, and that it's reflective of something within you, and that it may be over many lifetimes if you believe in past lives. And it could be like a theme that you constantly have within your lives. But so getting to know your shadow. And so oftentimes it does come out as like an inner dialogue whenever we're in sessions. And it's like, okay, we've met the shadow self. If that's really a lot for a person, maybe the next time we're going to talk to the shadow self. What do you represent? Why are you here? What purpose do you serve? And it can be a process, especially if you're dealing with like the wounded feminine and the wounded masculine, or your persona. There's different archetypes within the shadows. So the persona is like the mask that you wear for other people, So it's things like that. So talking to it, getting to know it, working with it. And really the best thing that I tell people to do is, okay, like you've been fighting your shadow all this time. It's important that whenever you meet your shadow, if you, whether you see it or feel it or just know that it's there, so walk up to it and say, okay, no more, no more fighting. We're going to work together. Even though this may be scary, we're going to work together.
Yeah.
and it takes whenever you do that, it kind of takes you, or brings back some personal power to you. It takes the fear away, really. And it's like, oh, I can conquer this and I can understand it, versus it being this thing that's uncontrollable. It's out to get me.
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. And change is always scary, especially when you're trying to make very um dramatic personal change. Like you need to change your mindset. You know that you need to deal with the things that are giving you anxiety or stressing you out in some way or another.
Yeah.
It can be, I can see how people would be kind of afraid to take those first steps. And I could also see how having somebody like you coach them through the process would make it less scary.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, like I said, anybody can do it on their own, but it's always better to do it with somebody else, because, I mean, you're afraid and it takes courage. And, you know, I won't lie and say that there's not been times whenever I've turned and ran from something. And it's like, oh, I was not ready to see that.
Yeah.
Let me try it again later. So yeah. But there's many different ways after that. Once you get to know your shadow, it's to start that inner dialogue, to, I know we always think that crazy people talk to themselves, but we all have those sub personalities. um, some people will journal. You can find journal prompts to kind of help you if you don't know where to get started. If you're like, oh, I don't know how, or I don't have the ability to see, or I don't remember my dreams or whatever, then you can find journal prompts that kind of help you if you're more on the logical, rational side versus the intuitive side. So just kind of knowing how you learn is important. So there's meditations, there's journaling, there's energy work and meditation. Therapy is a wonderful thing. You can go to a therapist and say, hey, I've heard about shadow work. Can you help me with that kind of thing? If you do remember your dreams, keeping a dream journal is amazing, because that is your subconscious talking to you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. The one thing that I will say that really helps people is, whether you do it in a session or on your own, is make a list of the good things, like challenge the good parts of yourself. Like, for example, if you write down, oh, I'm a disciplined person, then that means that you're probably repressing something that's lazy about yourself. So
I gotcha.
Yeah, it's good to have a little challenge.
Yeah. So, like for me, I'm always doing. And the reason I have so many hobbies is because if one kind of has to be set aside momentarily, I feel guilty if I am sitting still watching TV for like, maybe one night's okay, but 2 nights in a row, and I'm like, I need another hobby.
Right.
And so there's probably something there that I need to deal with that's causing me to constantly pick up new things that are going to take up time and eventually stress me out and make me go, oh my gosh, I've got too much going on. What am I going to? Because
Right.
I go through that every few months. I'm like, what did I do to myself? Why am I doing this? So I just, as a like looking at it from a personal perspective and probably sharing too much with people, um, I I understand what you're saying, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So, was there anything else you wanted to say about shadow work before we move on to another subject?
I will say one thing about shadow work is, I know some people get really overwhelmed by it. or some people really have just a really they're very low vibrationally. They have a lot of depression. Maybe they have suicidal thoughts, things like that. If somebody is really, if you don't have a good sense of self-worth at some level, I always tell people, like, before you start shadow work of any kind, be honest with yourself. Are you that kind of person, that would spiral? You don't want to start looking at the bad parts of you and be like, oh, well, I'm just an awful, terrible person. And then you can't dig yourself out of it. So I know I personally had to really work on my divine feminine first and cultivate like practices of self-love and self-care. That meant, changing my mentality, not being so hard on myself. And whenever I say changing my mentality, changing the mindset,
right?
Not talking to myself every day in the negative, So it's really important, regardless of whether you do that or not, but understand it's important to not be so hard on yourself, because we're all human. We all have those dark parts of us. And, part of loving yourself is, yes, looking at those things and integrating it and understanding it. But you need to love yourself through the process of it.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Could you just explain the divine feminine for the listeners who maybe are not, have not heard that phrase or are not an understanding of that phrase?
Okay. So, regardless of whether you're male or female, because this is not about genders, it's just about traits that embody a feminine characteristic or a masculine characteristic. So there's divine feminine and there's divine masculine, and each person contains both. But the reason I chose to really work on my divine feminine was because the divine feminine really helps you step into your power as a woman or as a feminine being. And it's really about how you, instead of always, giving to other people, now it's my time to receive, and feeling okay with receiving, whether it's self-love or taking time to do nothing. It really helps you to learn how to nurture yourself whenever you dive into the divine feminine. So it really is almost like the divine feminine is like your divine mother. How would you mother yourself? And a mother is very nurturing, very loving. And it's a very powerful thing, because you have to have that versus, constantly going and doing. And that's why we're always burnt out. So, yeah.
Yeah. So with divine masculine, like what would be the character traits for that?
So divine masculine would be more like, the action, the doing, it's that protection. Let's see what else. It's easier sometimes to talk about the toxic traits. And toxic traits of the divine or the toxic masculine would be things like people that lash out, like they're constantly angry. They feel like they don't need to heal. They don't need to work on these things, that they're okay. They won't relate to people on an emotional level. It's kind of strictly intellectual, right? Okay. The toxic feminine's more things like codependency, or being a victim constantly, or feeling like you're always victimized, or people are out to get you. So stuff like that.
Yeah. But so I could see on how working on your divine feminine or masculine could take a lot of work, because if you're constantly in a victim mindset and you feel like you're not getting anywhere because other people are holding you back, or the universe is working against you or something like that, it could take a lot of work just to change that mindset and pull yourself into the opposite, which is your own personal power.
Yeah.
Cool. So, changing the subject, you
Okay.
make really beautiful mala necklaces.
Thank you.
And you're always like highlighting these beautiful crystals and you make jewelry. And so, could you tell us a little bit about like what got you into especially the mala because there's purpose behind that. It's not just decorative or ornamental. So
Right.
could you talk a little bit about that?
So I actually got into mala beads. Well, mala beads actually found me. I really wasn't anticipating that, but I needed to do a service project for my yoga teacher training. And I was like, well, I've always been like really crafty and creative. What can I do that's kind of yoga based? And I had never heard of mala beads. And but I mean, I had seen people wear them, but I didn't know what they were called.
Mm-hmm.
They're also, I guess, mala beads are also like the equivalent of like rosaries, and you can interchange them, right? You can either use them for prayer or meditation. And so I was like, oh, that'd be great. I can just make some of my current students from other fitness classes like, hey, like I'm making mala beads for my teacher training. Please help me out and order some. And they did. And, it sort of blossomed from there. People really loved them, but they didn't understand them. And I've always been really inclined to, or really attracted to gemstones because,
Mm-hmm.
again, they have their own energy and they can really help within the energetics of somebody else. And so it's like, well, what a wonderful thing. Like if somebody's doing a meditative practice, well, let's let their malas be gemstones, because sometimes they're made of wood or just regular beads,
Mm-hmm.
glass beads, whatever somebody finds appealing. But I really wanted to do the gemstones just because not only is it a meditative practice or a prayer practice, but the gemstones within the malas can help really embody that change, really hold that intentions, and you put your energy into it, and it just sits on your necklace, even if you're not meditating with it, and continues to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that. So
Yeah.
it just grew from there.
So what are your favorite gemstones to work with? Or if somebody asks, like if they've been working with you and they ask for a mala, do you choose the gemstones for them based on their needs, or do you let them decide kind of like, well, that's a pretty color,
Yeah.
maybe they're drawn to a certain color like amethyst because they need what amethyst brings to them and they don't even realize it.
Yes. So I do a little bit of both. People kind of get overwhelmed with gemstones because there's like, oh, I don't know, there's like a million of them.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, of course, people ask me like, hey, what can I use for this? And I'll give them, ideas. Here's different options, but I always ask, regardless, like, is there any colors that you don't like, or if you just want me to wing it, I'll intuitively pick them for you. um, so it's a little bit of both. I always tell people like your eye usually is drawn to what you need
Yeah.
as far as gemstones. So if there's a gemstone that you keep coming back to, then it's usually calling to you in some way. And so yeah, I'll
Yeah.
make a for that.
Awesome. Do you want to talk about the your yoga and belly dancing and how you combine those? Like, so anybody, just in case anybody's listening from your area, if they wanted to
Yeah.
take a class.
I do call my belly dancing class Divine Feminine Dance and Flow
Yeah.
because I wanted to give people like a time and a space. Like because people kept asking me, how do you work on the divine feminine? How do you get started? What does that look like? And I can preach about self-care and taking baths and whatever all day long. People are not going to do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, let me give you like a regimented, like sacred space and a time that you have to feel that you're obligated to come to, you know. And but let me make it fun. And so dancing like that, especially belly dance where you're engaging in your, especially your core and like really moving the
Mm-hmm.
sacral chakra, that place right below the belly button. That really helps somebody connect to their divine feminine it kind of will help reset the mindset from looking at their bodies in a negative way to be like, oh, we're in a place where I don't care if my fat jiggles a little bit. As a matter of fact, that's beautiful. It adds a little something extra, you know? So, you know, it kind of embodied all of those things, as well as some freedom of expression with the body, with belly dancing. We also used some silk fan veils for some fun. And people really like that, especially whenever they realize, whenever I tell them, like, hey, like, you know, you're the one moving these fans, and you're seeing your energy past your physical body, you know, because the fan doesn't move without you. And they're like, oh, that's really cool, you know, like, yeah. And then, you know, we'll end it with some yoga that's also kind of centered around, you know, the divine feminine, and I'll use meditation throughout it, some imagery that's also along with the divine feminine, and you know, breath work, connecting to the body and feeling. I want you to also work out, and also stretch, but I really want it to change your energy. That class is really meant to change the energy within yourself.
And you teach this in Hickory, North Carolina?
I do. I teach it at Hickory Community Yoga on Saturdays at 10:45 a.m.
Okay. So if anybody is listening in the Hickory area, look Elizabeth up, because it sounds like it would be a really fun class to take. And it actually has a purpose beyond just calling it exercise.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's helping all of you, like mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah. You know? It's a holistic class.
It is.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So tell people how to get in touch with you. I will put your website address in the show notes, but just go ahead and tell everybody how to get in touch with you, where they can find you.
So if anybody is interested in either yoga or belly dance classes, the Divine Feminine Dance and Flow classes, or if you're interested in Reiki sessions, whether you're in the area, but Reiki and shadow work sessions can also be done at a distance, so it can be done over Zoom. If you're interested in that kind of thing, you can find me on my website at elizabethpowellfitness.com. Or you can email me at powellfamilyfitness@gmail.com. Powell is Powell.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. And
thank you.
It's been so much fun talking to you and learning about these things that kind of I'd heard of, but just didn't quite understand. And I think probably a decent number of my listeners were kind of in the same boat. So on behalf of them, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been really fun.
Yeah. Thanks again to Elizabeth for introducing us to shadow work and why it's such an important part of the healing process. And thank you for listening. Please reach out through the contact form at peeppodcast.com if you have stories to tell or an idea for a show topic. That's PEEP podcast.com. Remember, that stands for People Experiencing Everyday Paranormal. You can be as anonymous as you like. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter. I'll only email it once or twice a month max, I promise, so no worries about being spammed. You'll receive briefs on recent episodes, information on any upcoming appearances I might be making, news, and some additional fun stuff. In fact, I'm taking requests for what you'd like to see included. You can keep up with the show on its Facebook page, facebook.com/peeppodcast. If you enjoy the podcast, please give it some rating love on your favorite podcast app, share it with friends, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Doing so will help the podcast be found by others. A huge thank you to everyone who has given the show some love. I truly appreciate it. No matter how you support the show, listening, telling others about it, financial support, or any other way, I absolutely appreciate your being here. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and be well.